So today we're going to start the still life with chrome. You guys are going to want to choose a reflective chrome object, maybe a stainless steel coffee cup. I used a teapot. Um, Anything that's got a good chrome, good clean chrome with a nice reflection. You can choose any other object. I chose a glass with some brushes. You could do some flowers, and then if you can also pick something kind of colorful with a little pattern to place under or beside your reflective object so that the color is pulled into the reflection. So here I have a teapot. It's sitting on top of a magazine, colorful magazine, and a cup full of brushes. So just like we always do, you might want to start with a burnt sienna start. It might be nice to use both your Payne's Gray and your burnt sienna at this layer so that you can distinguish between objects. Here I've started with the burnt sienna. I've established my ellipses over that central axis, so the ellipses are equal as they move down. Remember, they will open up as they move below your eyesight, okay? So as it moves up, this ellipse is a little skinnier, and as it moves down below your eye line, you can see the bottom of that same object's ellipse is much wider. As you move, you might want to move into a different color for your underpainting. So here I've shifted to the Payne's Gray with the jar so I can distinguish in front of the teacup or the tea kettle. That might be a good move to kind of bring a little bit of sanity to how you're layering your objects. So I'm just working with those two colors. I'm using a ton of medium, so it's almost more like a watercolor at this stage. And I'm just, remember, worried about like temperature and structure. So I'm just trying to get my ellipses correct. I'm trying to get the brushes placed where I want them. I do advise doing what I did and draw the back objects first and then layer forward so that you're getting really, it'll make your ellipses and your symmetrical objects much easier to draw if you don't have to stop at an object that's sitting in front of it. Here I'm starting to deal with value mostly. So I'm just using less of the medium with either my Payne's Gray or my burnt sienna, and often I'm using both. Together they create a really good chromatic black. So I'm just slowly building up my cool side and warm side. So the left side over here I'm perceiving as my cool side. This is my warmer side, and my jar will have the same. So we're back to all the basics that we learned in bag painting, in the can painting, and then we'll even get to the interior painting that we did. So right there it is again, just showing you that buildup of value. I would stay with these two colors for as long as you can. I shifted right here into a wider palette, but I am pretty much sticking with a dead palette. So I'm using mostly Payne's Gray, yellow ochres, burnt siennas. Some of these are created through complementary colors, and some of them are just the dead colors. So you feel free to move freely between dead palette and the complementary colors for neutrals. So I'm really concerned mostly about value at this point. I'm not very concerned about anything else. I don't care about reflections. I don't care about any color that is, being pulled into the teapot yet. I'm only concerned about chiaroscuro. So I'm trying to find a cool side and a warm side, and I'm trying to find a core shadow. This is my core shadow side, and my core highlight is a little bit off center right here, and then everything in between. So you can really see the dead palette being forcefully used here at this stage. And I'm really pushing that warm side, cool side, and trying to, line up my shadows that I see. But don't get pulled into reflections, or don't get pulled into anything that would be perceived as pattern, almost as if you're ignoring the pattern that was on the drapery, you just were trying to concentrate on the form. That's what you're doing with your teapot first. Just concentrate on the form before you start dealing with all the reflections that will occur later. So I'm starting to work on the jar on the left. I have started to work more full, into a more full palette. I have this sort of crimson and green complementary color set going on this side. And it's a clear jar, but I'm still mostly concerned with having a cool side and a warm side. And I'm really concerned about dark and light core highlights and core shadows. And you can see I'm pretty loose and gestural. You don't have to be really precise. You just have to get the right color and the right temperature in the right place. And then the looseness can really work for you. So I'm just starting to create my background here. So just like the drapery, you should attempt to use some sort of complementary colors, especially in your backgrounds. My background's pink, so I'm starting with this greenish tone, like a sap green tone, so that it helps me with my shadows behind that pink. And then I'm choosing to create kind of a violet base. I had no reason, the colors on that magazine are actually pretty colorful. I just thought it would sit nicely against the pink background or the green at the moment. This is sort of like you establishing your 3 wall spaces in your interior room. Once you pick your color, you're just going to sink all those colors into that violet. I could have chosen a teal, neutral teal. I could have chosen maybe a yellow ochre, and it would have altered the way I saw the colors sink into it. Just realize that that choice just needs to look good within your palette. So I'm starting to kind of work, let me go back a little. I'm moving out of my dead palette at this point. So this next move, I'm fully into my full color palette. And if you've noticed, I shifted pretty strongly out of the green and into the pink that I actually see. Let me go back. At this stage, I was not concerned about the colors being reflected into the pot, but as soon as I brought the pink in, I made sure to distribute that pink everywhere because this is a reflective object. So for instance, the top part of this teapot was mostly pink because it was very close to that color physically and it was reflecting in. So once you do something like your background color, start to distribute that color everywhere because that color is refracting and reflecting all over, especially this mirror-like object that we're using. So I'm seeing it all over the place. So when you have a color in your hand, make sure you distribute it evenly, like try to find that color everywhere. At this point, I'm dealing a little bit with also like the handle reflection, the top handle reflection. I'm still really holding to my warm side and my cool side, but my darks, I'm darkening at this layer and I'm really lightening my lights. Because remember, as you paint, your values start to diminish and you start to lose contrast. So at this stage, I was really pretty conscious of making my darks even darker. Just because I knew as I moved along I was going to start losing some of that contrast. So in the middle, when you've moved to the full palette, you might want to take a stage and reassert your contrast. So really get your darks out and your lights out and really try to find those deep shadows because you're going to lose them as you paint along. Go back. So at this stage you can start to see I'm developing more of the pattern on the base. I'm dealing a little bit with what's occurring on the magazine. I'm finding more color. So once I pick a color up like the violet that I've put into the base, I started to try to find that in the jar and in the bottom of the tea kettle. So anytime you pick up a new color and you introduce it into the painting, be sure that you introduce it into every object that it is adjacent to. If a color is near another object, it is going to interfere. It isn't going to sit still. It's going to reflect and refract. So I tend to toggle between extremes in the middle here. So before I was trying to make my darks darker, now I'm concentrating mostly on my lights. Don't feel obligated to look for everything all at once. When you're looking for the pinks, only look for the pinks. When you're looking for your darks, look for all your darks. At this point, I was looking for lights, so I was looking for all my lights. But trying to toggle between finding everything all at once is overwhelming. So really try to only tackle one color at a time as you slowly introduce into a full color palette. So at this stage, I was getting far more fully developed in my color. I was really introducing some more saturated teals, some more saturated pinks. I was looking for the reflections that were occurring in the teapot, and distributing. So here's my teal. So I looked for it up here in the handles and in the tea kettle's top, and I was looking for it in the jar. So it feels very, very full at the end, but remember I was only dealing with one color at a time. I'm also really concerned over here with allowing some of these edges to disappear. You don't have to have hard edges everywhere. These soft edges along the rounded object are working very well to help create space because these edges are further away from us. So they can be soft and out of focus. And these edges are very close to us, so they're very sharp and clear. There's a quick shot of the still life itself and the painting next to itself. Here I'm almost at the end. I've kind of brought in the pink back a bit. I actually wanted to flatten it out a little. There was too much visual information. There's a lot going on in this painting, so I felt like my background needed to be simple. I went ahead and almost deleted the edge of the magazine. Where it met the pink, it just kind of disappears into the background. I've allowed soft edges on the cool side to recede and soften and blur, and so that my harder, more developed areas of the kettle come forward. You don't have to develop everything. The brush I did quite early on and never kind of went back. You don't have to put detail everywhere. Pick and choose where you want the viewer to look. Looking everywhere is overwhelming, so definitely distribute the visual interest. At the very end, I did a little bit of this sort of texturing. It's kind of an old teapot, so it had this varnished and rusty spots. Those sort of details I do last, just like the pattern on the drapery. Because I know where the form is, I have good chiaroscuro, I've worked my reflections in, I've really distributed my color. The last thing I'm interested in doing are those little details. Now those can be really fun, but I would wait. Wait till the end when you feel really good about your form. So I think that's it. That takes me all the way to the end. Here's a little bit of a bottom that I was missing there. If you have any questions, you can refer back to this demo. You can go to our check-in site and give me some pictures along the way and ask some questions. Okay, good luck.